Okay, y'all have been bearing with me this whole time as I test 1,000,001 different techniques for this thing. I don't have a fucking Blue Yeti or any kind of fancy setup. I'm learning as I go. But, there's people who sound like they're recording into even more of a potato than I am. So I figure if that cottage industry of just dinky DIY, get her done YouTuber still exists 20 years into the game, it's okay if I fucking use my phone app to record until I can get a better setup and start getting better at audio editing and things of that nature. This is supposed to be an audio diary after all, but that doesn't mean it's not a ground for me to just hone things and get better at stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of reasons to feel anxious and off right now, but I know one of them is the untimely passing of one D'Angelo, originator of the Soulquarian collective slash artistic movement of the 90s and early aughties. The people like Questlove, Erykah Badu, that whole scene. Just D'Angelo is one that, like a lot of the Soulquarians, I have, that kind of surface level knowledge of because they just felt like they would always be here. Erica's still here. Questlove, I'm pretty sure, still works with oh my god, whichever Jimmy he's on the show for. These people have just been such a constant presence for so long. So when you hear about this man dying from what was a private battle with cancer so early, it's like, girl, it's giving Chadwick all over again. It's just, it really reminds you of the importance of giving people their flowers while they're still here. And that's not to say that D'Angelo didn't get his flowers. I seen another small creator make a video saying, um, D'Angelo was respected just because, like, he was respected by us, us. And just because not everyone in the world was on game, whether because they're younger or they're just not in the community or whatever, it doesn't mean that he was not given his flowers. And it's like, I get that. I think, it's a tough time. All you can do is just keep praising people, keep celebrating them, and then we just do our best to let their legacy live on through, those of us who are a little younger, and then the people who are younger than us. We keep passing it down. I know even my youngest sibling was not that familiar with D'Angelo, and I said, "Oh wow, I need to put you on. I need to put you on." I feel like you've probably heard shit by him before and didn't realize it was him, but that is a failing on my part. That's a gap in our education we got to rectify for you. Um, but in terms of people who are still here, I really, really, really have been wanting to give some flowers to the Wayans family because, nigga, it is truly their world when it comes to entertainment. Because, so, sidebar, remember in my first episode, I said I wanted to see him. I wanted to see that fucking football horror movie that everybody hated because I had read a football horror book last year with similar subject matter. Um, yeah, I saw this. Again, it was not a Jordan Peele project. They were a little sneaky with the marketing, but at the end of the day, it did say produced, so it's not Jordan Peele. But yeah, I had fun, but that, not to get too far ahead of myself. The main point is like I enjoyed the Wayans of it all in there, particularly Mr. Marlon Wayans, and just thinking about how much I had fun with that reminded me of how much I had fun with other projects of theirs throughout my whole life. And just the fact that their mainstream rise started not too long before I was born. And their legacy and influence is in like every single decade and aspect of my media life. We don't talk about them. At least I was thinking, do we talk about them the way that we do the Coppola family? And I Googled, and I was so excited to find this thing from ScreenRant. It's a piece written by Timothy Lee and Colin McCormick last year. Um, and it's called The Wayans Family Tree Explained: Who's Who in the Show Business Family. And some of the main bullet points on here, it says the Wayans family is a Hollywood dynasty known for iconic shows and movies like In Living Color, the sketch comedy show, and White Chicks, the comedy from 20 years ago. The parents, Howell and Elvira Wayans, had no Hollywood ties, but influenced their children's rise in showbiz. And then I'm not going to read the whole article because it's quite long, but it's worth you checking out. I'll just try to look at some of the highlights I did. But these these writers, they said, like other legacy families within the entertainment industry, such as the Coppolas and the Barrymores, the Wayans are an extensive family in which most family members have been actively involved in Hollywood. And it says like actors, comedians, directors, screenwriters. Now I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I mean? I was like, I can't be the only one who was saying they're giving me Coppola energy with the whole dynasty, the multiple generations. It's so they're connected to everything. And there is a poll on Tumblr that made me a little indignant. And I know you got to take online polls with a grain of salt because sample size, who's the ones who's taking it, and all these things. But still, like somebody was like, do you know who the Wayans brothers are? Not even the whole family, just do you know, Sean and Marlon? And the poll, out of like 100 something people that it had reached last night, it said like at 60 to 40 or something like that. And me and all of like my black and other POC, I'm saying POC people, other black people and other people of color I converse with, we were all indignant like, nigga, if you're you get a pass if you didn't grow up stateside or very, very just not in touch with US American culture. We get it. We get it. But if you grew up in the United States at any point within the last 30 years and you're old enough to be online, it's no excuse to not know who the Wayans family is. It's no excuse. Really. Because in this fucking Screen Rant thing, let me go. They have like a little, not family tree, but it lists a lot of the notable family members who were in show business. So we got Keenan Ivory Wayans, who of course is the one who created In Living Color, which launched Jim Carrey's career. For those of y'all who don't know, I'm finna put you on game. It launched Jim Carrey's career. If you are a Jim Carrey fan and you did not know that, now you know. Damon Wayans Sr., who the thing that I know him most from is My Wife and Kids, which is a sitcom that was on like 20, 25 years ago. And I remember my dad liked it. I was not the biggest fan of it, but there's other stuff he's been in that I enjoyed. There's Damon Wayans Jr., who he's been in a lot of stuff, but funnily enough, the thing that I like him most for is a sitcom that like was really shitty, and I'm gonna go into that later on. Um, it's the sitcom Happy Together that got canceled after one season. One season. Kim Wayans, who got a big, big boost on In Living Color, was also on My Wife and Kids. On In Living Color, what I always think of her is like, so the other day I was listening to Crystal Waters, who is a house musician from the 90s, and her famous piece, um, She's Homeless, it's like parentheses, um, G word woman, the G word for Romani people that we don't say no more. But it makes me wonder why she didn't just call it She's Homeless because she doesn't say the G word in the whole song. But yeah, um, she had that song, and then Kim Wayans had a very, very famous parody of it on In Living Color. Um, Going down the list of people, Damien Dante Wayans was also in My Wife and Kids. Sean Wayans was on the show The Wayans Brothers, taking it back to that poll. And of course, Scary Movie, and of course, the movie White Chicks. Marlon Wayans was, of course, in The Wayans Brothers, in Scary Movie, and in Requiem for a Dream, where people were like, "Oh my God, you got dramatic chops," and it's always funny seeing people just continually get surprised by the fact that comedic actors pivot very well into drama and just more serious material. Because I don't have anything written or pulled up about that, but that's just a very, comedy and tragedy, those things are intertwined. A lot of it comes from the same place. Shoot, fucking, it's reminding me of like that quote from, what the hell is that movie? The Denzel Washington Ethan Hawke cop movie that I can't remember the name of, but Ethan Hawke is like, smiles and cries, all you got is your smiles and cries, and kind of talking about how those things come from a similar place. I'm misquoting him, but you know what I mean. It's all intertwined. It doesn't. If you're a good comedic actor, chances are you're gonna be a good drama actor. If you're a shitty comic, you're gonna be a shitty drama actor. Blah blah blah. Anyway, that's that Screen Rant framing of it. I know I wanted to continue and kind of go more into my own personal history with like the stuff that's really, really close to me from the Wayans legacy. So I know some of the things that I pinpointed was, let's go down in the list that I fucking wrote down. Okay, I wrote Wayans family. I said Scary Movie. If you old enough, you remember those old Budweiser "What's up" commercials. I remember that shit so vividly, and I remember how they used it in Scary Movie because I forgot if I ever mentioned it in any of my podcast episode so far, but my mom was a horror junkie back in the day when she was closer in, like, I'm entering my 30s soon. When she was in her 30s, I remember her watching Scary Movie and all this shit round the clock. Um so I just, I I remember that. I remember the "What's up" and all of that. Uh I said the Wayans brothers show on WB was another thing that was really, really close to me from their legacy. Uh let's see. I know I have a Rotten Tomatoes this thing. Okay, Rotten Tomatoes. The Wayans brothers, rated TVPG. It ran from 1995 to 1999 originally on the Warner Brothers network, which does not exist anymore. It merged with another really like black network, and it became the CW um when my youngest sibling was born. But yeah, Wayne's Brothers, I remember, obviously I was like, I didn't watch it during the original run because I was a baby, but when it was in syndication and reruns, according to this wiki, and I'm sorry, I think that thing was from Rotten Tomatoes. This is from the wiki. So the wiki was saying some of the similar logline shit and explaining the people involved in Wayne's Brothers and everything. But I wanted to go on a tangent about the nature of syndication, reruns, affiliate stations, and how I love the sense of like timelessness and ambiguity that these things give. Hold on. When did they say? It said something about 2002. Okay, so syndication. Warner Brothers, this is quoting from the wiki for the Wayans Brothers TV show. Warner Brothers domestic television distribution handles syndication distribution of the series. In September 1999, after the series was canceled by the WB, the series began airing in off-network syndication nationwide. At that same time, Chicago-based national cable superstation WGN began airing reruns of the series, airing the series until 2002, when its broadcast syndication also ended. WGN, both the local Chicago feed and the national Superstation feed, aired the Wayans brothers. And I'm skipping ahead. Wayans Brothers is one of 3 WB series to have aired on WGN, both in first run and syndication form. So, like, that adds to it just because obviously I am from the Chicagoland area. That's where most of my life has been spent. And yeah, WGN and some of these other things that just we got shit from random markets. It was so interesting because as you said, it was, or as I said in the wiki, um, it aired on WGN both in that original thing, um, but also it had the rerun rights. It kind of reminds me of there was this concept they used to have that was called like uh Disney on ABC, I want to say, and they would have these random like Disney animated things that were they would put on like Toon Disney, and then you would see it on the ABC network too, because obviously ABC was part of like the whole Disney, corporation shit. And this was in the early 2000s. I remember, like late 90s, early 2000s. It's just interesting how it works. I wrote further in like on my whole tangent about reruns, syndication, affiliate stations, the timelessness of it. It made me like it had these things had me thinking I grew up in the 70s to 90s, early 90s. I was born in the mid slash late 90s. It depends on where you categorize October 1996, if that's the mid 90s or if that's the late 90s to you. But these reruns had me thinking I lived when like Good Times was on, or I lived when the Fresh Prince first came on, you know? It's the kind of thinking that has people thinking Delilah, the radio host, or the Top Dog Law advertisements um, are only in your region. And if you know, you know. It's like the media version of thinking that you're the only culture that keeps a plastic bag full of plastic grocery bags under your cupboard or something. I love the way these things diffuse. I love how they work. Um, so I know I spent a while talking about the Wayans Brothers show, and I might need to just make a whole post about that because there's a lot of other things in here, like how Phil Lewis, I forgot he was on there. That's Mr. Mosby. Because technically, I watched the Wayans Brothers show before Sweet Life came out. I remember the premiere of The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, which is 20 fucking years old now. That makes me want to cry. Time is crazy. But it was weird seeing that. That goes back to my whole thing of how the Wayans are in like they have their fingers and everything. I feel like you could play that Kevin Bacon 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You could play 6 degrees of the family Wayans with the way they are so interconnected. Because I said, Jim Carrey, Crystal Waters, Phil Lewis, who was not only on the Wayans Brothers sitcom, but also he was on that other show, Happy Together, that I said I really, really, really enjoyed. Even though it was a dog shit show. um which brings me into that lets me actually talk about Happy Together if I can find what I printed out about that show. Where the hell did it go? I don't even know where that shit went. I don't know where I put it. But Happy Together was the sitcom that came out on CBS in late 2018. And I remember I was working as a home caregiver in my client family. If we weren't watching like propaganda police procedurals that I watched like soap operas, we were watching Happy Together. Um, and the premise was like, and I'm so mad I don't have the freaking Rotten Tomatoes thing. I don't know where I threw it, but oh, it's right here. Is this it? Hold on. Hold on. Yes. Okay. Premise. Jake, Damon Wayans Jr., and Claire, Amber Stevens West, lives are changed when Jake's client, a 20-something YouTube celebrity turned pop star named Cooper, played by Felix Millard, moves in with them to avoid the paparazzi in this comedy from Austin Earl and Tim McAuliffe. I don't know how to say that man's name. Sorry to that man. But yeah, that was from that was like the synopsis. I printed a Reddit thing. I know I had like a IMDb shit, but they pulled it from like IMDb or something. And I remember watching the show. I remember finding it cute, but then as it was going on, I'm like, is anything really happening in this show? And then you see people, some of the criticisms they have on the Reddit, they're like, yeah, the show in general feels devoid of actual conflict and purpose, which I can agree with. It feels like they're too scared to actually uh I don't know, like just push some of the conflict things that could arise from their characters clashing more. It's like they just want to write jokes and have it be bland. I don't know. But it's kind of like fluff. It's such a fan fictiony premise. Um yeah. Somebody else said on Reddit, it would have been better if Claire and Jake had been having problems in their marriage and Cooper being there brought them closer. And I argued that the problem in their marriage that the show argues is that they're just kind of like boring 30 something millennials who, they need this 20 something to kind of spice up their life again. And it's that whole dynamic that made me like start shipping them as an OT3 back in the day, because they used to just do these little bland flirting jokes. Because the character of Felix Mallard or Millard, I'm so sorry, but you probably know him. He was on Ginny and Georgia after this. He was on a few other things, but that guy, he's playing a Harry Styles analog. And I think Harry Styles is even like an executive producer on there. But it used to make me, that show would give me OT3 vibes, because like they would make these joking flirty quips that was, that was part of the laughs in the show. But then it's also like, no, why is this looking like the same kind of situation, the way they interact with this guy? If you change a few things around, it would not be out of place on some of these like poly dating shows that you have proliferating streaming services now. um so yeah, I'm not even saying anything really like insightful about Happy Together. I probably need to make a whole post or a separate video or something about that show, but it's bland fun. I like revisiting it every few years just to like turn my brain off and have fun with it. um there's like one fic for it on Archive of Our Own, and there's like a half done fic that I wrote 2 or 3 years ago that I gotta finish. Anyway, let's move on to something spicier. Him, the latest Wayans thing that I've had fun with. Um, yeah, it was not that bad. It wasn't that bad. Again, um, Marlon Wayans is in there. He moves between, playing it straight horror and being campy and over the top with ease. He's very charismatic. I didn't realize Miss Julia Fox was going to be in there, which also ties it back to a previous podcast episode where I was talking about Miss Julia Fox and my affinity for her. Um, I don't know. I don't know. And the thing is, it's really weird. I have such cursory knowledge of football. Maybe not cursory, but like, it's not my favorite sport by any means. I grew up around it because I was a marching band kid, and I have men in my family, and I'm part of my heritage as being American, and and I'm black. So that's a big culture, but it was never my favorite sport. But so much football media is my favorite. I love me some Remember the Titans. I loved Concussion with Will Smith. Um, I know about the program, Friday Night Lights. I told you I liked the football horror YA book from last year. So, of course, I like this football horror movie too. And this one, it was given like those compare and contrast with the YA book. There's a lot of religious iconography and allegory, and there's a lot of psychosexual overtones that was giving me OT3 vibes. And I wasn't going into it. I promise I wasn't going into it with chipper brain, but it came to me, and then I hop on AO3 and I see I'm not the only one who had that same idea. Um, I really need to rewatch football fiction and write a compare and contrast thingy. I know some other more learned niggas than me, like FD Signifier, have given some good context. Because, like, FD Signifier knows football. He fucking watches it. Not like me, who quit watching it for personal reasons 20 years ago and then would idly watch teenagers playing it because I had to, because I was in the halftime show growing up. But, yeah. I just I'll probably link some Tumblr stuff that endorses this movie a lot better than I am right now. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I had fun with it. It was a 3 out of 5 for me. Other horror reviewers have said the same thing. It was not nearly as bad as people thought. And I guess on that note, I will end with my resource recs. The first one is gonna be um continuing the whole Wayans thing. How I mentioned the Wayans brothers show. The thing that reminded me that that show even existed a few years ago was Primm's Hood Cinema on YouTube. He's a really, really witty reviewer of like black media. He's so sharp. I don't know if he does stand up too, but he's really, really funny. And he does, if you're someone who's familiar with people like Brutal Moose, picture if Brutal Moose was black, you get Primm's Hood Cinema. And it's not to be like he's the black version of Brutal Moose, because they're both doing their own thing, but it's if you like Brutal Moose and you like black media, you'll like Primm's Hood Cinema. And then the other recommendation is going to be bringing it back to D'Angelo and the Soulquarians, Digging the Greats channel on YouTube. His video about the Soulquarian movement. I think the video is titled something like the musical movement we don't talk about enough or something like that. This is how we keep the legacy going. We keep reminding people of the ones who came before us and the ones who didn't make it as far as we did. I don't know. I don't know. Like, life is up and down, but art, as we can see, is forever, because we're still talking about shows like this, like Wayne's Brothers, like Sweet Life and Zack and Cody, like In Living Color, um, decades upon decades later. Yeah, I don't know. I will organize, put timestamps, link everything below as needed. Keep an eye out for things like my him slash Ruin Road football horror analysis essay and the whole Judy Bloom essay I've been teasing at, probably coming in the next few weeks. And as usual, I thank you so much for continuing to listen.